Hello, I'm Judy Stiles. Thank you for joining us this week on Newsmakers. Well, 2020 is a big election year. We have the national focus on the presidential election and local elections. And joining me today, Jasper County Clerk Charlie Davis. Thank you for being here today.
As always, Judy, thank you for letting me be here.
And in Jasper County, when people talk about elections, it's your office that they think of.
It is, and I'm very blessed. I've got a great staff of 5 girls that work in my office, the 2 that work in the courts building in Joplin, and 3 in the Carthage Courthouse. They're very knowledgeable, and they do a fantastic job. They make me look good, always.
Well, what are your thoughts as you look ahead to 2020? It is a big year. You're going to have presidential primaries, a lot of things
absolutely.
happening.
We actually have 4 elections next year. We have the March presidential preference primary. That's where the Democrats, Republicans, Libertarians, everybody will choose their candidate that's going to be on the ballot in November.
Right.
So we have the March presidential preference primary. We have the April municipal election, so city council, school board will be on there, and there will probably be some bond issues with schools that are going to be on there.
Right.
Then we have the August primary, which is our local state representatives, congressmen, senators. We don't have a Senate race in Missouri next year other than our state Senate. And then, of course, November is going to be the big general election, which will be the presidential election, and it is going to be the biggest election this country has ever seen.
Well, I know over the years we've heard about trends in voter turnout. Do you think just hearing people talk 2020 we'll see that kind of change, more people coming out to vote?
Oh, absolutely. When asked how many ballots I'm going to print, we're going to print 100% of the ballots because we don't know what the turnout's going to be. We look at the turnouts on every election. As a matter of fact, this last election that we had 12.63% of the people turn out in that Joplin election dealing with the sales tax for the firefighters. 12.63% of the people who could vote actually went out and voted. Last year, or in 2018, we had about 58% of the people turn out for the election. So 58% is pretty good, and we're expecting it to be much higher than that. So I'm not going to run out of ballots. I promise you that. We're going to print 100% of the ballots to make sure.
So every polling place will have enough ballots if everybody shows up.
I guarantee it. It's going to be there.
Well, I thought today we'll talk about the procedures and what's involved with elections and so forth. But when you say county clerk, everybody thinks elections, but you do more than that in your position.
I'll be honest. There are a lot of things that I do that I did not know was the responsibility of the county clerk. But it's something that I've got a good staff. And between my staff and me, we get everything done on time. We're responsible for liquor licenses in the county. We have approximately over 500 liquor licenses that we issue on a yearly basis. And that's to whether it's bars or stores that are selling packaged liquor or caterer's license. Somebody could come in and actually have a wedding, catering event, etc. We're also responsible for doing notaries. So anytime you have any type of
form notarized, right?
You bet. You need it notarized. Everybody has to come through our office, and we have to go work through the Secretary of State's office to do that. But we're responsible for that also. And then also tax information.
So a lot of different responsibilities. But let's focus about the election responsibilities. And of course, the first step for someone to be able to vote is to register to vote.
Sure, absolutely.
And it's probably a good, as we look into a big election year, talk about a little bit about the procedures to register to vote.
Okay. In the state of Missouri, if you're 17 and a half years old, you have the ability to go register to vote. You can do that many different ways. Number one, you can go to the Secretary of State, the sos.mo.gov website, and you actually register online. We get that information to our office, and we send out the letters, etc. So that is one way you can do it. When you go get your driver's license, of course, a lot of times they ask you,
are you registered?
If you want to register to vote. You can go to our office in Joplin at the courts building at 601 Pearl, or of course you can come to the courthouse in Joplin at 302 South Main, and be more than happy to register you. So if you're 17 and a half, you can come register to vote. You can't vote until you're 18, but at least you can get pre-registered and get ready.
So if a student maybe is in high school, they're 17 and a half in the spring, but they want to vote when it rolls around in the summer for the primary, they can have that set in place.
Absolutely. We encourage people to do it as early as you can. Don't procrastinate. Don't wait till the last minute, because there's a lot of times people will come in the last week and want to register, but there's a deadline. And the deadline many times is about a month before the election. So if you wait to the last minute, unfortunately, you will not be able to vote because you're not registered on a timely fashion.
Now, what kind of paperwork do they need to prove who they are when it comes time to register?
When you come in to register to vote, we always ask everybody bring in proof of identity, bring in a driver's license, a passport, something of that nature, and then you also have to bring in something that's got an address on it, an electric bill, so that way we can tie a name and an address together. And when you do that, we will actually send you a letter and when you send it back, that will show the proof of identity and that that is your actual residence.
Of course, we're recording this show at Missouri Southern University. Sometimes college students have a question, do I register going to school? Do I stay registered at home? What do you recommend for those situations?
What I really recommend is if you're living in the dorms or you're living in Joplin or Webb City and going to Missouri Southern, why not participate in the local politics? Go ahead and register to vote where you're actually living. Most of the students come here for 4 years. You might as well go ahead and register here. I believe the law actually says that if you want to, you can actually still register to vote where your parents are, if that is going to be your permanent record. But the right thing to do is why not go ahead and register to vote in Jasper County, in Joplin, wherever you're actually living, and participate in the political process there, because I promise you there's going to be things on the ballot that are going to affect you, so you might as well be able to vote on those things too.
Now, for those students and the registering to vote, and sometimes there have been voter registration drives on campus. Do you see more of those possible as well?
We do, but what we try to get people to do is come into our offices and register, because when you register, if there's a drive and you register to vote at Missouri Southern, the people that are actually registering you are not registrars. So when you go to the polls, you again have to bring that piece of paperwork with you and not your voter identification card. You have to bring just a piece of paper and then prove who you are. That's why we say, go ahead and come by our office. We will get you registered. We will make sure that everything is valid, because, of course, you have to be a United States citizen to register to vote. And when you come in our office and do that in our office, then you will get your actual voter ID card in a short amount of time, and that's all you will need to go vote.
No, you have to be a United States citizen. Is there any proof of citizenship required?
Well, here is something that we tried to work on the Missouri legislature for many years. The only thing that really protects us is on the voter registration form, the very top line that says, are you a U.S. citizen? Yes or no. If you say yes, and you have a Missouri driver's license, and you have something that proves your address, then you illegally can register to vote. And we try to discourage that from happening, because you are breaking a federal law if you register to vote and you are not a true U.S. citizen. And you will get found out, because we have ways, we're not out to try to catch people, but we match Social Security numbers, because whenever you fill out their voter registration form, it asks for the last 4 of your Social Security numbers. So that number is matched with the Social Security Administration, which is matched with the Missouri Department of Revenue, your license plates, your driver's license, and all of that matches up. So if you have an address and a name and it does not match up with that Social Security number, it's going to kick it out.
It's going to raise some red flags and check things out and so forth. So updating information. We may have students living here. They may live on campus the first year. They move off campus, live in an apartment. How often do they need to update their addresses as they move? If
you move, we ask you to come in and change your address. It's just a little form that you have to fill out. It doesn't take you but 30 seconds. You can do it again here in Joplin or in Carthage. It takes you 30 seconds to fill out that form. You'll be on your merry way. Because what people don't understand is your neighbor could be in a different precinct as you. So you could live at the dorms and move a half a mile away, and you could potentially be voting for a different state representative. You could be voting for a different city council member, or you could even not even be voting for a Joplin issue. Just like what happened this last April, we had the Joplin, or it was last August, we had Joplin had that ballot question about sales tax.
Right.
There were a lot of people were upset because they couldn't vote, but that was only for Joplin citizens.
So you had to be a resident of the city. So you
had to be a resident of the city, because I don't want people in Webb City voting for Joplin issues, just like I don't want people in Joplin voting for my Joplin or Webb City Council members. So it's very important to make sure that you change your address, because that will definitely define who you will be able to vote for and what issues you will be able to vote for on the ballot.
So updating your records, I imagine the same, somebody gets married, a female, their name changes, they need to put their new name on the list of those types of things.
And it's very easy to do. It just takes 30 seconds or so. Come by our office and we can get it done real quick.
So how often do you try to canvass or follow up on who's actually still out there registered? There's so much mobile society.
We have a canvass every 2 years that we send out letters to all the people that have moved, etc., and we send out information letters to everybody. So we're required to do that every 2 years before every federal election, and we wait to get those letters back, and we verify that those individuals still living there. We do get a lot of letters that are come back that are not forwardable because those people actually move out of state.
So you can't find them.
So you can't find them. So we do the canvass every 2 years. Now we also check the local newspapers, look at the obituaries. So if somebody passes away, then we have the ability to remove them. We make them inactive, and then after 2 years of non-voting, then they're taken off the voter rolls, because sometimes somebody might accidentally take somebody off based by name, so that way we don't remove them. We just make them inactive, and then if they don't vote in 2 years, then we assume that was an individual that did pass away. But we're really diligent. We want, number one, we only want U.S. citizens voting. Number two, we want to make sure that if you are registered to vote, you are voting in the place that you're supposed to. And number three, we want to make sure that if you are allowed to vote, that you can vote, and we can make it as easy as possible for you to come in, register, get your ID card, and get out and vote anytime that there's an election.
I know, as a registered voter, you get the voter identification card and registration, and has that precinct information. Some of those things you don't really think about until it's voters' time. You know?
Absolutely. you know, there's a lot of things. You know, it's not only your president; it is also your congressman, our senators. Of course, everybody in Missouri votes for our senators, but your state senate, your Missouri House district, your city council. Your water district, if you live in a rural area. I'm in Jasper County Public Water Supply District number 2. So there's a lot of things that go in place. It's not just a presidential election. There could be up to 10 to 15 different things that you will be involved in based on where you live. Now
let's go down the path of time to vote. They come in to vote. The procedures for voting on election day. They need to bring that card. They need to do photo. I hear so much about photo IDs.
Absolutely.
Kind of clarify for people what happens.
Well, what we always do is we always ask everybody, bring in a photo ID. Bring in your voter ID card. If you have your voter ID card, then we're good. Bring in your photo ID. And we scan it in, the little code that's on the back of your driver's license. Whenever you go in, we have these things called poll pads, those little iPads that have all of the information for all of the registered voters in Jasper County. And you can show your photo ID, your driver's license, and it'll actually scan it in. And it'll pop up with your name. And the whole thing is, again, to make sure that you're authorized to vote and that you're voting at the right precinct, because we have a lot of people who will show up at one location to vote and realize that they're supposed to vote at a different location.
Go down the street or
go down the street. And that might sound silly, but you may be voting in a different precinct. You may be voting in a different House district than you would be if you're voting at the other location. So we always ask, just bring your picture ID, bring your voter ID card. We can get you in, get you out as quick as possible. Next year, there's going to be a lot of things on the ballots. Not only are there 4 elections, the August and November election are going to be very busy. There's probably going to be a lot of initiative petition ballot issues that are on the ballot. So if you can get registered to vote early, if you make sure you show up and have your photo ID, so that way we can get you in, you can vote, and get you out as quick as possible. It makes it easier for everybody.
That's really sped up from the days when I remember going in, the ladies would have a book and they'd be flipping to find your name.
Flipping through the book, and then here, initial the book. Now it's just all scanned with the camera on the iPad, flip it around, sign it, and you're on your way.
And now the actual voting itself, you're still using, I guess, call them paper ballots, but it's not the paper as far as we have to count up the...
It's not the hanging chads where you can have problems like they've had in Florida several different times, but it is a paper ballot that is scanned into the computer system. When I got elected, number one, I thought I knew how elections were run. I didn't know how elections were run. I will be the first to admit, great staff educates me. They educate me every day. But I am confident in the security of our elections in the state of Missouri. I'm responsible for Jasper County, and I have no qualms that at the end of those Tuesday nights when we do the tallies for all of the votes, that the tally that we do is accurate. Our machines are not connected to the internet, so there can be no collusion from any other foreign country. Our iPads that have all the database of all of the voters, etc., we hook it up to the internet just to download that information one time, and then it's taken off the internet. So there is
So when you go to the polling place, there's no electronics tied to the internet?
There's no electronics. As a matter of fact, when you're at a polling place, there is no internet access. We don't use the internet for our iPads, for the what are called ICPs, the scanner machines. And if there ever was a problem since we're using paper ballots, we can always go back. And if we had to hand count them, which we wouldn't want to do, we could, but we could run them all through again and attest that our elections were very valid.
So one of the key things I know when you pick up your ballot is to fill in the circle completely, so they can be read.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you put your ballot in the machine, it will kick it out if it doesn't read it. So there are times that somebody will vote for 2 people and you're only supposed to vote for 1. It rejects it. So you can feed it back in and tell it to accept it, but it's not counted.
Right.
So that's why I read the instructions. The instructions are very plain on there. It says vote for 1. It even has a little example of how to fill in the little
yes
oval.
means this, no means that.
Yeah. We have fair ballot language, so even though there's a lot of things that are initiative petitions that are put on the ballot that it's got 1 paragraph there and you think you know what you're voting on, it could be 40 pages long. Right. And I have an issue with that, but the legislature needs to fix that. I can't do that.
That's a Jefferson City thing, right?
That's a Jeff City problem.
Now, if people can't make the elections, there's still opportunities, of course, for absentee voting here in Missouri.
Absolutely. The state of Missouri does not have no excuse absentee voting, which means you have to have a reason. Okay. Primarily, if you're at work and you can't get off work, let's say you're a doctor and you have surgery that day, we don't expect you
to have a 12-hour shift in the operating room.
We don't expect you to not see a patient. If you're ill, if you're sick, any of those things, you can actually vote absentee. And we also have a permanent absentee list. If you're elderly or you're disabled, you have some sort of disability that will make it very difficult for you to come vote, you can come into our office and we can actually put you on a permanent voter absentee list, which means when an election comes up, we will automatically send you a ballot in the mail. You can fill it out, put it back in the envelope. Self-addressed, stamped envelope, comes back to us, doesn't cost you anything, and your vote will count. And we try to encourage our elderly citizens to make sure that you get put on that list. There's a lot of people that find it very difficult to get to the polls. I don't want to make it so easy that a 22-year-old can just be sitting behind their Xbox controller.
I'm going to go vote today. I'm going
to go vote. We want those individuals need to come out to the polling locations and vote. But if you've got some physical need or you're elderly, absolutely, we will be more than happy to send you an absentee ballot.
And these are absentee ballots. It's not early voting. We hear some states they say we have early voting.
We do not have. We have absentee voting. Right. Early voting means anybody can come in at any time. And a lot of people will ask why I'm not in favor of some of those things. You know, this is something that is a constitutional privilege that we have, and that's the right to choose those individuals that are going to lead our community, our state, our country, as well as a lot of these initiative petitions and these ballot language things that are on the ballot. And I think people need to be a little bit vested. Get off your backside, get to the polls.
One day you're asking them to go in and vote.
Absolutely. So get out to the polls and vote.
Now, you've mentioned the ladies working and people supporting you. There's always the poll workers that we see, and those who vote a lot. You see the same people, men and women, working there. So you have a dedicated staff of people who show up.
We have 184 people that man the polls in Jasper County when it's a countywide election. 184 people, and those of us that vote realize that the vast majority of them are our retired senior citizens. And unfortunately, we have seen some get sick. We have seen some pass away over the years. And one of the things that I have a requirement to do is to get enough poll workers. So we are constantly out there not campaigning for office, but campaigning for pleading for workers to come in. And it's a good deal.
So what are the requirements to be a poll worker?
You just have to live in that precinct that you're going to work in. And we can actually send you to another precinct if need be, but I think if you're a poll worker in that precinct,
you're seeing your neighbors. You're seeing the people
your neighbors, absolutely. And you know, for me, my dad was a poll worker for a long time, and people would come in and see Aunt Joe that you haven't seen in a long time, and it's a camaraderie. It's a fun time. You know, you get paid $140 a day. If you're a supervisory judge, meaning you get to come back to the courthouse and bring the little chip with the results, you get paid $165. So it's about $10 an hour. But it's the time. It's a public service. It's the opportunity that you have to work at the polls to make sure that our elections run very smoothly. I think it's a giving thing to the community.
So how do they sign up, or how do they find out more if someone's watching?
You
and they
can
say,
you
"Oh,
can come down. You can come to my office, room 103 at the courthouse in Carthage, or you can go to room 200 at the Carthage Court or the Joplin Courts building, and Crystal Terry and the Joplin officer will be more than happy to sign you up. It doesn't take very much. All you have to do is you fill out a piece of paper. We'll get you on the list, and not everybody works every election cycle. If we've got 220 people signed up. We only need 184, but we try to even that out. We try to make sure that people, if they volunteered to come and to work the polls, that we call you back as often as we can. But come to our office. We'd be more than happy to, and we would beg and plead.
So do you have certain training they go through as far as this is how it
we
for
do.
them?
We will have training this next February. Of course, we will have a March presidential preference primary. So we will actually have training in February, maybe the end of January, to kind of refresh people's minds. Since it's a federal election in March, there's a few things that we have to do differently, because we will have the printers there, that if you're visually impaired, you have the opportunity to listen to it, and you have a special ADA equipment that will actually print out your ballot with your choices on it. So we have to train our elderly folks and all the poll workers on how to do that, because we only do that every couple years, and we forget.
So during an election itself, I imagine you keep in touch. You have those polls, 46 different precincts where you're having people vote. Does your office constantly check throughout the day? How are things going in Joplin? How are things going in Carthage?
Absolutely. What we normally do is when we have a big election, we have two bipartisan teams. So we got two people, a Republican and a Democrat, are in a single vehicle, and they have an extra machine. They have some extra equipment. And what they will do is they will drive around the county, and they'll go to different polling locations. Everything okay? Any problems? If there's a problem, first thing they do is they always call me. I'll drive out. We'll fix the problems. Usually it's maybe an equipment issue. But we have two bipartisan teams that go out there on an election during the whole day. And then, of course, me and my staff are there. We're constantly answering the phones all day, because somebody will go to the poll and they're not showing up in the poll pad for some reason.
What's the matter?
We can actually get onto the computer system, find out exactly what the reason is, why they're not in the poll pad. But it's a long day, but we do have a lot of people that go around and make sure that everything's running smoothly. I did this last August election. I like going out to Royal Heights United Methodist Church, because they have cookies for everybody who goes out there and votes. They have snacks out there, and they know how to treat their people.
So when the polls close, then it's a lot faster for you now, having this electronic little chip or card to come back and count them?
It is. It still takes a little bit of time, because the process is, at the end of the day, the poll workers are actually there. They're required to look at the iPads, look at how many ballots have been cast. Right. Then they go and they take all of the ballots out of the machine and they count them. They don't look at the votes. They just count to make sure if there's 150 people should have voted, they count, make sure that there's 150 ballots. Sometimes that number isn't exactly there, because somebody may come in, get a ballot, go over the vote, and say, "Nah, I just don't want to vote," and they just walk out. So occasionally there's a ballot or two that's not there, but that's because people just take them. So it takes a little bit of time. And normally on a general election, we're going to be there till about 10 o'clock. But at 10 o'clock, we will have the results, and those results are going to be accurate.
And thanks to the media, electronic media today, you can get that word out a lot faster.
Absolutely.
The old days of the news reporter standing there saying, "I'm waiting for the results."
It's kind of amazing. This last election, we had one TV station was there. The other three weren't there, because what I do is, once we get the election results, we save it in a PDF file format. As I walk out the door, I've got an email contact list of all the media in our area. I send that attachment to them, so as soon as I push send, I walk out there and I make the announcement. So the media has it at the same time that the general public does. And I think that's good, because the media needs to get that on the air, so that way people will know how the election results turned out. But we also do it in such a fashion that the people that are there at the courthouse get that information too. So it's the people that are running for office, people that had vested
Right, the
interest.
candidates want to know, how's it going?
Absolutely. City of Joplin, of course, was there this last time, as well as the fire department and the police department, just so that way they could know exactly.
They could hear firsthand how did the results.
Firsthand. And it was a hoot and holler this last time. The police, the firefighters were excited at the results.
Now, you mentioned candidates. Now, we don't have a lot of time, but if somebody wants to file for office, you have certain deadlines if they're seeking positions.
Absolutely.
They need to follow
What you have to understand, the courthouse is responsible for our county seats. If you're running for school board or city council, that is all done.
Go to the city, go to the school.
Go to the city and go to the school. But if you're running for county office, of course, if it's a partisan election, if you're running for like county clerk or one of the other county offices, of course you have to go to your party leader and file a fee to actually get put on the ballot, and then you come to our office and we do all the paperwork. And this next year is going to be so much easier because the computer program that we're using now, we're going to be able to actually sign you up immediately. And you're going to be ready to go, and we give you your packet, and you're on the ballot.
So you're eliminating a lot of the paperwork through the computer.
That's one of the things, somebody who was involved in IT for 30 years, I wanted to try to make sure that we get up to date on all of our projects and our policies and the things that we do to make sure that it's very easy and accurate.
So heading into the new year, the people looking at the different elections we have coming up, with the one in March, part of your office is just get the word out to people. You have until now to register. You have until now to get your absentee ballot, to keep the public informed that way.
JasperCounty.org. There's a section on there that says elections. You can go there, and we are going to have up a calendar that will show when you have to register to vote, by what day. You have to make sure that you know where your polling location is. You can check.
Type in your address and it'll say go here.
You can check to see if you're registered to vote. So we're trying to make it very easy for people to find out, to make sure that they are registered and what is on the ballot. So we will put sample ballots up on the website, so that way people can look at them. What's really frustrating is somebody says, I didn't know that there was an election on Tuesday. Yet their campaign signs up all over the place.
What is that election everybody's talking about?
Yeah, it's always that Tuesday. It's always the first Tuesday after the first Monday of April, November, and August. So whenever you see a campaign sign up, get ready. There's an election coming up.
Circle that date on the calendar so they can be prepared.
But they can go to JasperCounty.org under the elections, and all of that information will be up there very soon.
Great. Well, I'd like to thank you very much for providing information for the audience today.
Absolutely.
Look forward to following up in 2020 as the elections come up.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much. And I'd like to thank you, the viewers, for joining us this week. I'm Judy Stiles. Hope you can join me again next week at the same time on the station. We'll see you then.